I knew you were going to do that.
She said speak, I mean.
All right.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for part 2 of our series, both on Zoom and in person. So thank you for, people came back. This is great news. And they have their notebooks and everything. And we're back, yeah. How many do we have on, Brent?
We've got 49.
Ooh, okay. Do you want to give it another minute or two?
Ready to go, yeah.
Okay, then how about our first slide? It's a slideshow this week. All right, here we go. Okay, so are you ready for a recap? Okay, this is audience participation, remember? You don't get just to sit there. All right. We have a new person coming in right now. Welcome, Joe. Okay, so what are the 5 ways we get information into our brain? First one,
Visual.
second, auditory, third, touch, fourth, smell, 5 is taste. Okay. Did anybody practice that to see which one you get first? Yeah, okay. This one is my favorite. What is the maximum number of things we can hold in our working memory? Yeah, at what age was one of the questions I just had. Well, it's 5 to 8. But we also learned last week that after 25, our brain processing speed slows down 0.5 to 1%. So my example, not just here, but to my team here at Tahali, is that I am 65. So if we work off the 1%, my processor's running 40% slower than it did before. But how much more information do you have in your brain in those 40 years? So think of your brain, remember, as a file cabinet. And throughout your life, you're gathering all this data into your brain, into your file cabinet. So when someone walks in and I think, I know that lady. Yep, what's her name? I know her. And I'm looking through my file cabinet and my processor's running slower. And then, thank God, in this case, Sarah's got her name tag on. But, you know, sometimes it can take a minute or two, and that is normal aging. Okay. Now, the differences between normal and not normal aging. I had a few people reach out to me and ask me to send this list. So if anybody would like me to send that list, please send in an email. I believe it's info@wesleyhomes.org. And for those of you here at Tahali, I'm happy to make a copy of this. So normal aging, you can't recall a word, describe the word to get it to pop up. So if I'm looking at a coffee mug and I think, okay, that is something, that's a mug, that's a coffee mug. Give people time to process information. Go more slowly. Okay, we're all in a hurry, so slow down. We're slower to think. That's okay. That's okay. We've had rich lives. We've got a lot of good stuff up there. We may hesitate a little bit more. You know, I see this especially with some of our residents where they'll kind of hold back because they think there's something different about them. No, No, we're all confused. We're all concerned. We're all meeting new people. I mean, right now there's 101 people that live here at Tahali. Now, I've been here since the beginning, so I got to know people one at a time. But if you're new and you move into a community, holy cow, you've got to know 100 people right away, right? So we're going to slow it down. We're going to wear name tags. More likely to look before they leap. Again, it's just because you're feeling uncertain. You know what? Life's short, man. Jump out there. What's the worst that can happen? We'll know the person, but not find the name. Yeah, we had our meeting today, our resident town hall, and I look out and I know all the faces, and it's like, okay, some of the names when I'm up there and I have the 5 to 8 things, and I've got my agenda set for housekeeping and all these things I want to go over, and then I try to pull a name out of the air. And so you will hear me in those meetings say, yes, ma'am, because I can't remember the name right then and there. All right, may pause when word finding, the pregnant pause, right? And new data reminds me of old data. Yeah, that's also a great big one. Now, not normal aging. Unable to think the same. Okay, we talked last week how the wiring in your brain starts to go in different directions. We're going to see a really great video about that tonight. And you can't sequence things the same. So it is harder. Unable to do as before. Okay, everything's connected. Okay, so again, your body may not be responding correctly to the input. Unable to even get started on a task. Okay. We'll get stuck in a moment in time. We'll hear that where someone will repeat the same thing over and over and over, because that reel, it's like a movie reel that gets stuck, or those old cassette players that would keep going around and around. Now I'm really dating myself, aren't I? At least I didn't say 8-track. Okay. Unable to successfully place a person. Yeah, you know them, but you're not sure who they are or where you know them or anything else about them.
Awful when you're in the grocery store and you see a face coming towards you and you know who that person is. And I can't figure out that one way. What?
Exactly.
I don't know what to do with it. You pretend like you didn't see them, or you just go, "Hey, how are you?"
Well, exactly. The question was, if you're out in the grocery store and you see someone and it's like, I know that person, but do I knew them from work or maybe from church or something like that? One thing I learned from Teepa Snow is to call them friend, how are you? Wow, how long has it been? And give yourself a chance to catch up. So that is part of normal aging. Words won't come even with visual or verbal or touch cues. Confused between the present and the past. That's a big one. We see that one a lot. They're not sure how they got where, and this is Kansas, and no, it isn't, and yeah. And then personality and or behaviors, depending on different types of dementia, and we see that a lot with vascular dementia, there is a huge personality shift. And it's just part of the process.
Is it usually worse then?
It certainly can be, yeah. And again, this is a moment in time. Everybody has a different journey. People's journeys move in different ways. Any questions here before we move on? Okay, here we go, Brent. So what's under the umbrella of dementia? So some people will automatically say, oh, you have Alzheimer's. Well, yeah, maybe not. Okay, there's over 100 different types of dementia. Over.
Isn't Alzheimer's one?
Yes, it's one. It's under the umbrella. Okay, but it isn't always. And sometimes people use those words interchangeably. Okay, not all dementia is Alzheimer's. Oh, okay. Yes. I will repeat the questions.
Would you say there were 1,000?
No, there are over, the question was, are there over 1,000 types of dementia? There's over 100 types. Okay, so not all dementia is Alzheimer's. But again, people, it's a common phrase. People see it on TV. There's, the Alzheimer's Association has a lot of commercials. So some people think they're one and the same, and they're not necessarily. It is possible to live a full, joy-filled life with awareness of what is happening and skills to support changing abilities. I introduced this wonderful woman last week. This is Marley Patterson, and Marley is the nurse manager for the Arbor here at Wesley. It's a Holly. And I pale in her shadow, honestly, and talk about someone who has this down pat. Marley is an expert of how to bring joy to people's lives with dementia. Okay, it's honestly, we waited a long time for her and it was worth every minute. It was just, yeah, it's great. So let's talk about the most four common types of dementia. Next slide. Okay, so there are also 4 truths to dementia. And some of these you may remember from last week as well. So with dementia, at least 2 parts of your brain are affected, okay? And then it moves. It may not move at the same rate, but it will affect, it starts 2 places and it will move. Okay, it is progressive. It keeps changing and it is getting worse. Okay, you're not going to get better. It's chronic. It is not curable or fixable. One thing, working with families over the years, they'll say, oh, I just read this article about this new vitamin supplement and it cures dementia. And I always think back because years and years ago, I was homesick and I was watching Oprah. Okay, and Oprah has fought weight problems for her whole life, right? I mean, she's famous, you can read it everywhere. And she said, if there was a diet pill or some magic formula to be thin, I'm the wealthiest woman in the world, don't you think I'd have that pill or that potion? That's what I think of here is it's not. And can it make the person feel better going through the process? Maybe, but is it going to cure it or fix it? It is not. And sadly, it's terminal. It will result in death.
How does it result in death? You just lose all of it.
Right. So the question was, yeah, I'm being prompted. Thank you. I have a wonderful crew here. So the question was, how is it terminal? How does it result in death? Well, your brain, if you think of your brain as the control center for everything, your brain controls your movement, your heart rate, your organs. So as your brain deteriorates over time, okay, your brain stops being able to tell your heart to beat and your lungs to breathe and all your organs to function. And all of a sudden it stops. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it happen over a period of time or does it happen pretty fast?
The question was, does it happen over time or fast? I would say in my experience, most of the time it's a fairly slow process.
Yeah, so the average life expectancy from onset of symptoms till the end of the disease progression is 8 years, and it changes what the type of dementia it is. So vascular dementia has a shorter life expectancy than that of Alzheimer's. So
You said eight.
about 8 years is the average from the onset of your symptoms.
Okay. So Alzheimer's disease, we're going to watch a short video that really will kind of explain this question because you'll see kind of how it affects the brain. So let's watch this short video on
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's disease.
What is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's is a slow, fatal disease of the brain affecting 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. No one is immune. The disease comes on gradually as 2 abnormal protein fragments called plaques and tangles accumulate in the brain and kill brain cells. They start here in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where memories are first formed. Over many years' time, the plaques and tangles slowly destroy the hippocampus, and it becomes harder and harder to form new memories. Simple recollections from a few hours or days ago that the rest of us might take for granted are just not there. After that, more plaques and tangles spread into different regions of the brain, killing cells and compromising function wherever they go. This spreading around is what causes the different stages of Alzheimer's. From the hippocampus, the disease spreads here to the region of the brain where language is processed. When that happens, it gets tougher and tougher to find the right word. Next, the disease creeps toward the front of the brain, where logical thought takes place. Very gradually, a person begins to lose the ability to solve problems, grasp concepts, and make plans. Next, the plaques and tangles invade the part of the brain where emotions are regulated. When this happens, the patient gradually loses control over moods and feelings. After that, the disease moves to where the brain makes sense of things it sees, hears, and smells. In this stage, Alzheimer's wreaks havoc on a person's senses and can spark hallucinations. Eventually, the plaques and tangles erase a person's oldest and most precious memories, which are stored here in the back of the brain. Near the end, the disease compromises a person's balance and coordination, and in the very last stage, it destroys the part of the brain that regulates breathing and the heart. The progression from mild forgetting to death is slow and steady, and takes place over an average of 8 to 10 years. It is relentless and, for now, incurable. Helping your family, friends, and neighbors to better understand Alzheimer's will reduce stigma, improve care, and even help the fight for a cure. Thanks for helping to do your part. Learn more at www.aboutalz.org.
Okay, yes, sir.
What is plaque?
The question is, what is plaques?
So they're buildups that go onto the neurons in your brain. So your neurons are what are the messengers. They ride on that. So the message that says to, that's what I'm seeing, move my arms, that sort of thing. So they are protein buildup on there. They block those messengers.
Using material that's in your brain already?
I don't know what makes up.
Dead cells maybe? Or just-
I'm not sure on that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was asking what makes up the plaques. So the proteins. I'm not sure on that.
it was a great visual to see just what I was talking about, how different parts of your brain are affected at different times. I'll tell you a quick story here because we're doing well on time. I mentioned last week that in our family, it went from me taking care of residents and family members of the residents to it actually hitting our home. And it was my son's stepmother. And she came to our house for brunch, and she'd been to our house many, many times. She was a woman in her early 60s. And we invited her to brunch. Our son was in town. And she went to the dining room, and she couldn't, you could tell she wasn't making sense of what she was seeing. And here are 6 grown adults who, we've known each other for more than a decade, and we're looking at her and we're trying to figure it out. What in the world is going on? And she was getting more and more anxious and more upset. And she started to cry, and I'm trying to help her sit down because I do this for a living, right? And the problem was, we had changed out our dining room furniture and we didn't have chairs anymore. We had benches. So the different parts of her brain weren't recognizing that a bench is actually where you sit. So by the time we kind of pieced it together, because she had her words, but again, it wasn't making sense to her. And by that time, all she could do was cry. We got her seated, and she was so exhausted, I took her into our family room to lay down and take a nap because she had just worn herself out. And so I want to encourage you all, just do your best. Nobody set out to set her up for failure or to upset her. And nobody wanted her never to leave their home. We wanted her to be able to get out as long as she was comfortable. This was a familiar place. We thought we were doing everything right. And we weren't, because she was at a point where her brain wasn't connecting the dots as well as they had just a few months previously. Okay. So young onset is typically a chromosome 21 associated dementia. And that's what my dear friend had, she was actually diagnosed at 62, but the neurologist said that he would guess she'd had it 5 to 7 years before, but she was in a stable work environment where she could, it just run almost on automatic pilot, and was laid off from her job. And that's where it all started to come together. Other types of Alzheimer's is you can have a late life onset where you might be in your 80s or 90s. You lose the ability to retain new details first. And that goes with, short-term memory versus long-term memory. Your short-term, we'll see a great video next week about short and long-term memory. Recent memory is worse than old, a little bit repetitive there. Some language problems, people might misspeak or misunderstand. And again, just think about the different parts of your brain not working together. More impulsive or indecisive. One of the things Teepa talked about last week is that, curiosity sticks, safety awareness, not so much. So people tend to be a little more impulsive than they were before. Makes mistakes about time, place, and situations. They miss cues, okay? And this poor lady, she didn't get the cue that everybody else is sitting down at these benches. She just knew she didn't know what that was for and didn't have any idea what to do with it. Okay? Yes,
Okay, you would have title up there that's dementia.
Mhm.
I get the feeling you're talking about, or a title up versus Alzheimer's. I get the feeling though that you're talking about dementia, not Alzheimer's. And that confuses my mind when I read Alzheimer's. Is it really, you're only talking about Alzheimer's and the symptoms of that, or is this all dementia?
Okay, so the question was, the symptoms that I just ran through on this list are particular to Alzheimer's, but isn't it true that this may also overlap to other types of dementia? And yes, that is the case.
Okay, so
There are some similarities that run through. There's some things that are very specific to certain types of dementia. Okay, yes,
Is it hereditary?
I'm sorry.
Is it inherited? Is it genes? An hereditary
Right.
disease?
The question was, is it inherited? I was thinking inherited, yes. Okay, it can be. It can be, especially this chromosome 21 associated. it can be. One other thing is I've had people say, well, you know, the doctor says it's Alzheimer's disease, but isn't it true that you can't tell that until the person passes and it's postmortem? That is not the case anymore. It used to be, it is not any longer. And now I know with this family member of mine, she had 3 siblings, so 4 kids in total. 3 of them all wound up with Alzheimer's disease. The 4th one did not. And so then the question became, do you want her kids who were in their 30s to be tested? And they opted not to be. And I think, honestly, I think I probably would have done the same.
One way you can think of it too, as you said earlier, that they kind of all sound the same for dementia, is to think of dementia as the bowl and the types are the fruit. So they all have similarities. They all have things in common. They're sweet, they have seeds, but they're all different. So Alzheimer's would be the banana. It takes up the most room in the bowl because it's the most commonly occurring. And then you have your other types of fruit in there as well that are also types of dementia. So you may see the same things happening, but they're not, they are different in their own ways. So.
Okay, next slide. Vascular dementia. So with vascular dementia, abilities often are stable, then there are sudden losses and afterward a little recovery. So a little bit of bounce back. Okay, so different than you'll see with Alzheimer's. Symptom combinations are highly variable. They can have good days and bad days. It's the least predictable of all the types of dementia. Judgment and behavior are not the same as before. And this, I would absolutely put an exclamation point after that. And emotional and energy shifts can happen quickly. Okay. Anyone have experience with vascular dementia? Okay. Sometimes the question was, well, actually a comment is sometimes you're just given a diagnosis of dementia. You're not necessarily given any more information about that. Okay. Anything you'd like to add about vascular dementia?
So with vascular dementia, that is the one with the lowest life expectancy, and the patient is more likely to pass from a cardiac related event than the actual diagnosis of dementia itself. So generally a heart attack or stroke is what will be the end for that one. And the average life expectancy from onset to end of life is 5 years with vascular dementia.
Oh, question online. Will you explain again what makes something vascular?
So with vascular dementia, that one is usually a lack of blood flow to the brain, and that causes the death within the brain. So strokes, TIAs, any type of cardiac event that has blocked that blood flow to the brain will lead to vascular dementia. So a lot of times you'll see someone be diagnosed after a stroke.
Another question, how can you get tested for dementia type? So that we can kind of combo on that one, because depending on your symptoms or your other comorbidities, like if I have high blood pressure and I've had a heart attack and 2 strokes, you can kind of narrow it down. It's probably not Alzheimer's, it's probably vascular dementia. Okay, so a lot of it to me has been, you know, what are your other comorbidities?
Yeah, so they'll look at your lifestyle. They'll also look at your symptoms that you're exhibiting. So a lot of the different dementias have specific symptoms that you will see. Lewy body has its own, and then that sort of thing. So they'll try to narrow it that way. They can also do scans to see what part of the brain is being affected and narrow it down that way as well.
My husband was in the hospital over the weekend because he had lost sight of one eye. And the doctor, his neurologist, sent him to emergency because she thought it was another stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked, I said, you know, I've got long-term insurance. They're asking for a new MRI on his brain because he had one in 2018. But in this hospital, Tacoma General, everybody I talked to told me, oh, we can't tell from an MRI what if he has dementia. And why are they asking me to do that? And why did my last neurologist diagnose it as dementia from an MRI? So you know what I'm talking about or what they're talking about?
So the question is about
What kind of an MRI to take?
imaging that may be recommended or that her husband was recommended. And I can't speak to why they may have ordered that imaging or what they're seeing because I'm not qualified to read any of it. But one of the common ones that I hear about is a PET scan that they may do. But again, I don't know, I can't tell you why they would order that.
And then I was reading through the notes and one of them said, well, call the insurance company and find out what kind of an MRI they want. I didn't even know there were different kinds.
It's not easy to navigate, that's for sure. No,
How do you tell?
right. One more question. It's not clear on the relationship between Alzheimer's and dementia. The fruit bowl analogy confused me. Okay, if you have an umbrella or the fruit bowl, so an umbrella, and then hanging from the umbrella, you have different types of dementia. So you might have vascular dementia and Alzheimer's and Lewy body, Parkinson's. Okay, so all under the umbrella of what's termed dementia, but different types. A different way maybe to look at it is if you have, I have a hernia, okay? Not really, but you know, but is it an umbilical hernia? Is it, there's several different kinds, but all termed under that. I hope that helped. Oh, the next question's for you.
We'll send out they're asking about the recording and webinar.
Oh, okay, okay. So next slide. Oh, good. It does make sense now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yay. All right. Frontotemporal. Okay. Oh my, this is one of the fun ones. So frontal dementia, if that part of your brain is affected, they can say unexpected, rude, mean, and odd things. I've had residents with that, and you'll walk in a room and they'll look at me and say, my God, you're fat. Geez, you're fat. And you think, oh, I thought he liked me. Well, again, it's not him saying it, it's the part of the brain that's affected. So, you learn not to take anything personally. Sometimes there's an apathy and you feel like, gee, do they even care anymore? Again, it's the part of the brain that's being affected, not that person. Problems with initiation or sequencing, and disinhibited, also very common, where sex, food, drink, emotions, and actions. So people may do things in a public setting that normally, in their earlier years, they would never have thought to do in public. And now because they're disinhibited, they will do things in public. Again, just keep in mind, it's the disease, not the person. And then temporal lobe, difficulty with speaking, missing or changing words. The rhythm is there, but the content. So if you don't listen to the words, like we were talking earlier, that people have a certain cadence to their speech. So that part stays the same, but the words don't necessarily make sense. And then not getting messages where you can tell they're just not able to really understand and process the information that you're giving them. I'm going to give it a minute for questions or see if Marley has anything to add.
Nope, that covered it well.
Thank you. All right, any questions? Can you email? Okay. Okay, what causes frontal temporal dementia?
So again, the actual cause of dementia, they don't know, but it's the areas of the brain that are affected that cause it to be frontal temporal, or you'll hear it called FTD.
Right.
So your frontal and your temporal lobe are affected.
So most people know what kind they have, and their family know what kind they have, because I'm feeling like, what I'm not getting information.
The question was, do most people know what kind of dementia they have? And I'm gonna say it, to me, it's like about half and half, where we'll get a diagnosis code that'll say dementia not specific. Because the symptoms are there, but they might not be definitive to one type or another.
Mary Susan
Yes.
Marley,
Mhm.
so is it just the matter of whether or not your doctor is informed enough? And whether or not they send you to a specialist or anything like that, or?
You know, thank you for bringing that up, Rachel. Did everybody hear that question? Because you're on mic. Okay, so I'm gonna paraphrase the question. So could part of the reason be that perhaps your physician is not well informed on dementia and maybe you should be referred to a specialist? And, you know, that's really tough because I would say, yes, in most cases, that would be it. But many times, like we'll say, gosh, you have to go to a neurologist. Okay, you're having these signs and symptoms. This is very concerning. Wait, you know, let's have your doctor make you an appointment with a neurologist or send you a referral to a neurologist. The sad fact is, do you want to wait till November to get in with a neurologist? And that's the fact. So a lot of times people go off what their family doctor says. I mean, the blessing of a community, all of the blessings is sometimes it can be directed where our wellness nurse or Marley can say, these are the things we're seeing from this person day in and day out. We've seen a change in what's called someone's baseline behavior. The person I see every day when I look at Joe. Now, suddenly Joe isn't acting like Joe anymore. And so our wellness nurse can reach out to Joe's doctor and say, these are some of the things we're seeing here. Can this be expedited? We'd like her to see a specialist. And, you know, that's why we have a wellness nurse. And certainly one of the many reasons that Marley's here is to lend that expertise. And sometimes if you can turn that light on for your family doctor, then sometimes they'll say, okay, let me see if I can help you move further or move faster through the process. And some neurologists specialize in different things. So sometimes that's an issue where someone might have a traumatic brain injury, so they're seeing a different doctor, or they have epilepsy. So the doctor has a lot of expertise in that, but what do they know about dementia, or are the two related? So it's not easy. If you're feeling confused, you're right on track because it really is ever evolving. My sweet husband said, oh dear, you're an expert. Oh no. I have a degree of expertise, but this process changes every day. Okay, new technologies, new information. And so I'm good to keep up on a monthly basis, but boy, it can be really challenging. That is for sure. Is it a good, does frontal eventually affect temporal and vice versa?
I know one. Does frontal,
Will
So
it
they're-
eventually move?
yeah, they're co-occurring with frontal temporal. So both
Right.
areas are affected. I can't tell you which would be first or if there's a sequence
Right.
there.
The next question is it a good idea? Whoops, it just moved past me. Is it a good idea to have a geriatric specialist as your family doctor? I would say yes, if you can find one.
There's not one here.
That's another thing that can be very challenging to do. But, you know, honestly, I am seeing dementia diagnosis. We're getting phone calls here from people in their 40s that have had a recent diagnosis of dementia. And it could be for a myriad of reasons, but they're diagnosing people younger and younger. So that may not necessarily be part of it. If we notice a change in a resident at Wesley, what should we do? Well, thank you for that question. Every Wesley community has a wellness nurse. Okay. Wellness nurse, if you don't know the wellness nurse in your Wesley community, you can certainly check with the front desk and they can take your name and apartment number and reach out to the wellness nurse. Here, our wellness nurse's name is Jeannie, and Jeannie will go up and visit with the resident that you're having concerns about, or yourself or a loved one. And then I know here Jeannie comes down and reads in Marley and brings Marley into the loop if she has a level of concern. And I would expect the same in any Wesley community. All right. My husband, oh, okay. My husband had frontal temporal, and I have written our journey down in a book. Boy, I would love to talk to you about that, Madeline. That's, that's just amazing. I applaud you for that. It's something that people don't take time to do a lot during the process. And yet, oh my gosh, it is so valuable when we have that kind of information. It turns on lights for us. We had a family member here actually yesterday bring us a whole history of a person. And as you know, as we've learned tonight and the other night, that you lose your recent memories first as you work down. And to know someone's history, to know someone's life, it can give us so many cues on where we're going and what's going to be important when we get there. So that, my gosh, that's tremendous. Okay, I think we're ready for the next slide. Lewy body disease. So Lewy body can be related to Parkinson's disease or diffuse Lewy body. I have had many residents over the years that they'll move to memory care and, oh, they have Parkinson's. And then a couple of weeks later, oh no, it's Lewy body. 6 months later, nope, Parkinson's, nope, Lewy body. So yeah, it can be, because the symptoms can be very similar. On and off symptoms, movement problems, falls, hand use and swallowing. I think, yeah, that, fine motor skill. Visual disturbances about animals, people, and children. This is very interesting because they, a lot of times will have hallucinations or delusions, and they'll see small children and animals. I don't know. I have no idea why. That's very common. Delusional thinking or dreams that seem real. Again, they'll see children. Episodes of inability to move or sudden drops in blood pressure, heart rate, or blood sugar, and insomnia and sleep disturbances. Has anyone had any experiences with Lewy body? No, you're fortunate. It's okay. I have, whoops, that's okay.
Yes, Sarah.
I've heard
Mm-hmm,
for friends of patients
mm-hmm,
that the sleep disturbance, they stay up all night long.
mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that drives the family to looking for help,
Right,
because they can't get any rest.
right.
And is that what this is, insomnia?
It is. So the question or comment was that Sarah has had friends that have family members with Lewy body, and they stay awake all the time. And so they'll wind up looking for memory care because they're awake all the time. And that is a very common problem.
How do you treat that in memory care? Do they just let them stay up?
Yeah, so the question is how do you treat that? So you don't always need to treat it. Sometimes you just need to meet them where they're at. So for some people with dementia, it is completely common for them to want to stay up all night and sleep all day. As long as they're getting adequate sleep, you have to look at, are you meeting their social needs if that is their sleep pattern? But I have some families who tell me my loved one doesn't like crowds. They don't like to participate in these things. I'm okay if they're up during the night and they sleep during the day, as long as they're getting adequate sleep. So that's just one way we have to look at it. It's all very situational for that person. Now, if they're up all night, up all day, and falling asleep while they're walking, that's a different story. We're gonna look at that and try to get them back on the right circadian rhythm. But for some people, it's not necessarily a problem. It's just their way of dealing with the disease.
Okay,
Is there a way we get copies of this stuff? I'm pretty right with crazy.
absolutely. So the question was, is there any way we can get copies? And Brent does have it recorded, so you can do that. If you want the actual slides, we can send those to you as well. I can do that. We can absolutely. So by sending the slides, it's actually a printout of what you're seeing tonight. Okay. All right. So what do care partners need to do? So if you're the person that's taking care of your loved one who has dementia, what do you do? Well, number one, you have to take care of yourself. Okay. You absolutely have to. I will go out on a limb and say, sometimes this is the first thing to go where people stop taking care of themselves and it starts to wear on them. I have seen families where the care partner worked so hard that they died. Now who's going to take care of them? Okay. So you don't get a merit badge. This isn't the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. The whole reason we're doing this is to help you understand where you're at, where your support system is. Okay. That you're not in this alone. Okay. That is absolutely critical. I won't go into the marketing piece about, we have Wesley Home Care and we can come and spell you. So if you want to go out, and I had a lady say to me, I haven't had my nails done in years, and I was able to go out and have lunch with my girlfriends and have my nails done. And I don't even know what that feels like, but boy, did I miss it. Okay, because there are support systems in place. Understand the symptoms and progression. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. And my information is out there. Marley's information is out there, and we're certainly happy to help. Build skill in support and caregiving. Remember last week we did that fun thing where we did the hand under hand, where you go in like this, and then you do this, the bird, and then you spin around because you're here to support. Okay, this is one of those skill things that you can use if you're trying to take care of your loved one. Okay, you're trying to help them brush their hair, brush their teeth, anything like that. Okay, and I can send you a little thing on that as well. Build skill in communication and interactions. This one I always struggle with because, as you can tell, I like to talk a lot. And so to come up to someone and ask a question and not feel the need to answer it for them or fill in a word for them, that's one I struggle with. I got to be honest. Okay, we're caring people. We want to help them. Well, you can help them by being quiet. So feel free to encourage me. Those of you that are here at Tahali, feel free to encourage me to just be quiet. In fact, in the Teepa video, what did she say? Somebody was trying to talk to her and she said, shut up, just shut up. Okay. As we saw, sometimes people say things and they may be rude or unkind. They just want you to be quiet and let them get to that point that they can answer you. Okay, so the more we learn skills in these areas, the more we can help. Understand the condition of brain change. Okay, I have one slide I may sneak in next week, and it's a healthy brain and an unhealthy brain. And one is very plump and robust, and the other one looks like old cauliflower. Lots of gaps, right? When you look at a cauliflower, it looks good on top, and then you flip it over and there's all this room and all these holes. Okay, that's what happens when your brain is going through the changes. Identify and utilize local resources. Again, that's why we're doing this, because there are so many resources out there for people. We have a ton of them here. We've sourced a lot of things over the years. I have all kinds of, handouts and little clip videos. Oddly, YouTube, you can find out all kinds of interesting things. I did a class during the COVID, kind of the heart of the COVID pandemic, about dementia and isolation. And I found terrific things from the Alzheimer's Association in Australia. Okay, it's not just a local problem, it's a worldwide. And the other one was the World Health Organization. Not two places I would have jumped to, but they had some great information. And then set limits for yourself. Okay.
Sometimes you can't do that.
Oh, I'm going to challenge you on that, Joe. So the comment was, sometimes you can't do that. You know what? You have to. You just have to. And one thing for a lot of us, and I'll raise my hand again to say that I hate to ask for help. Ask my team. I'm here to help them. They're not here to help me. I'm the campus administrator. Why do I need any help? I'm here to support them. I'm here to support the residents and families of the Holly residents. It is hard for me to ask for help, but sometimes I have to. And again, you get no bonus points for doing too much. Because if you wear out, what happens? That's why we're here. For the people that live in the Wesley communities, that's part of the reason you moved in here, is because you have an army of skilled people around you, that our whole goal in life is to be that support, that care partner, okay, to support you and lift you up. And I had a mentor and pastor many years ago that said, "Oh, my dear, you have not because you ask not." Okay. Those words changed my life, because I thought there were bonus points for suffering in silence. And they're not. Somebody lied to me about that. I got no bonus points for that. And that's why we're here. Okay. And for those of you that aren't living in a Wesley community, it doesn't mean you can't reach out to us. Okay. We hope at some point you'll be part of our family, because we're just super fun people, right? Okay. But, right, see, they're agreeing with me. Too bad you can't see the people in the room that live here. But seriously, there are resources. There are resources for different incomes all over the place, okay? So don't hesitate at all. One thing I'd like to hit on before we close, because I'm better this week than I was last week on time. And that is, next week, we are going to talk about what next. Okay, so we have the foundation. All right, we kind of know what's going on. This week we learned about the different types. Next week, we're going to figure out what next. So at what point do you try to get home health? At what point do you need memory care? At what point might you need physical therapy? Okay, how are you going to pull those care partners in depending on where you're at in the process? But the last one, I'm going to challenge our fantastic tech team over here, because the last one, I really want to be as interactive as possible. I want people to ask questions. I gave you what I think you might want to know. I gave you, Marley and I put our heads together to talk about what questions do we get asked frequently, and that's what you're seeing. But oddly enough, we don't know it all, and we don't know what particular things you really want to know more about. So flood that email with the info@wesleyhomes.org with what you'd like to see in that fourth program. Okay, I can put it together, but I would much rather you send it to me and Marley, so we can set it together and put a program that's really going to be meaningful to you. Okay. Any other questions? Ooh, we're on time today. Oh, yes, sir.
I know this biological and everything. Do you think the environment that people have lived in as they were younger and growing up and so forth has any impact on the start of dementia?
So the question was, do we think that environment when somebody's growing up might also play into this? And I'm married to a firefighter, so I'm always looking at environmental things that might have long-term effects. So I don't personally know of any research, but I don't think we could rule that out.
Well, if you look at Agent Orange, I mean,
Right.
that's environmental right there.
Exactly. So Agent Orange, I don't know if some of you have heard of Agent Orange Parkinson's. So soldiers that were in Vietnam that were exposed to Agent Orange. Good job. See, she's awesome. But and there's an environmental one for sure. Yeah. Okay. Any last? Please share with us the impact of diet on the progression of dementia. Wow. Okay, sorry, I looked up one. I have a friend writing a book on caring for his daughter, diagnosed at 47. She is now on hospice 10 years later. Wow, I please keep me in the loop on that one. I would love more information. And you know what? Give that friend a great big hug, because that takes courage. That takes courage and strength I don't know that I have, but my gosh, that's amazing. So please share with us the info on the impact of diet and the progression of dementia.
So maybe for your final one, I don't have a lot of information
Right,
on
we can
that.
add that for the final program. Okay. Anything else? Exercise and activities. Yep, we'll add that to the list. Okay. I have a great video on music and dementia. Okay, any other questions before we close out for this evening? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to Marley Patterson, our amazing arbor nurse, and to the people here at Tay Holly. Have a great evening. See you next week.